and see how that works out. It might be that our connections are good enough that we won't be stomping all over each other.
Did you want to start with the roll call?
Let's do that. So do we have Matthew?
Here.
Robert?
Here.
Amy? Do you have Amy?
Sorry, yes, here.
And Annie?
Here.
And Paul? Do we have Paul? No Paul yet.
I believe Paul is in the process of joining right now.
Okay.
Julie May is on the line. Hello.
Hi, Julie.
Rick May's here too.
All right. Okay, so that is the first part of our technology update as far as how we're going to run the meeting tonight. So I'm not sure how many times we'll have to do this. Amy wanted us also to take a look at updating the technology for future meetings when most of us are in City Hall. And we have been doing some work on that as well. I found a really good deal on a 55-inch monitor for $280. So that is in the mix. The mount is not much. So anyway, a TV, a mount, a PC to go with it, and a keyboard and a mouse are about $700 just to get started. The part where it gets a little more expensive is when we get into the microphone, camera, speaker combination and how it will, how it works. The thing to consider is that if there is a stationary camera behind or with the TV, and where we were thinking for the TV is that spot between the emergency exit and the flags in that corner. If there's a camera just hanging on that wall, then it's not very dynamic and it's going to be the back of my head. And we'd have to spin around to see who was participating in the meeting. So microphone, mixer box, sound bar, camera, about $500 for that setup. To get the fancier ones that are actually pretty nice, they would sit on a table or in the middle of the room that has built-in microphone, built-in speaker, and it does have a dynamic camera that will not only provide, it can do as people speak, or it can do a combination, a panorama of the entire room, and then also focus in on people as they speak. Those are a little bit more. They're anywhere from $700 to $1,000. So that's something that we'll have to, wrap our heads around as far as what we want to spend on that feature, that part of the upgrading our audio visual part. So that's where we're at with that so far. But for sure, we're looking at getting the TV and the PC on the wall for helping out with PowerPoint presentations and that sort of thing.
This is Matthew. Thank you so much for looking into that and giving the update.
Of course. Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hey, Paul.
Hi.
Scott, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen of kind of the agenda and the process as we go along. So
perfect.
Give me one sec.
I am on the YouTube link and there's nothing there. Is there supposed to be something there?
There's a 20-second delay.
It says this channel doesn't have any content when I opened it up.
So Anders is on it and he says it's working fine.
I've clicked on the same link and I have the same message.
That it's not working?
This channel doesn't have any content. Or let's see if we go to, if you click on the video link, okay.
There's a delay.
I'm going to turn that off because that was driving me crazy. There's a video tab And that's where our live feed is at.
I'm able to
Okay,
see it, and you need to mute your computer, otherwise you'll get really bad delay.
And that's where our live feed is at. Yes, so
Absolutely.
we also need participants to mute as well.
Yeah, definitely mute the computer.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, so no changes to the agenda. Have you guys had a chance to look at the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, A, B, and C.
Second.
All right, so actually I'm going to backtrack on that just for the purpose of the notes. If you could announce yourself and then make your motion, then announce yourself and say the second, if you could, please.
Robert Muth, motion to approve consent agenda, A, B, and C.
Paul Hendricks, second.
Thank you very much. We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion?
You know,
All
what's
right, I'm
good
gonna
is, Leona, the way that's set up, where you put the consent, where you put it up on our screen, it's easier when I have it on my other screen.
Yeah, for me too.
Me too.
So if there's a way you can take it down.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to go around the table and ask for your vote. Matthew,
Ooh.
Yay.
Robert,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Annie,
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Motion proves. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
And then do we have any public comment?
There were 2 comments that were provided to council in the packet.
Okay. My packet just went away. One moment.
Which page numbers?
Where are those, Liana? They're not
Yeah.
hyperlinked from the agenda.
Oh, yeah, page 20
Fine.
is where they start. Did you download a recent copy of the agenda?
Thank you.
Well, I got mine from the website. Is that the most current?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we have from Harry. And from Pat and Karen.
Can I get a recap of what brought about Harry's email?
It's related to the downtown zoning change.
Gotcha. Thank you.
It's Ben speaking.
So this is from Harry and Donna, it looks like. And they're just commenting on their unhappiness with the new restrictions. Did they call? They haven't attended any meetings that I'm aware of.
I can cover most of the contents behind that in the zoning code agenda item.
Okay, thanks.
Was there a second one, Leona? I only saw that one, but maybe I downloaded the older.
There was an email that was sent by Pat Rice, and that was, I asked if he wanted it included in the packet, and he said he did.
Oh, okay.
Also sent
I
to
just
council,
didn't
but
see
it's the same email that he sent earlier today.
Gotcha.
Okay, if there's no other, then we'll move on. Next up is the COVID-19 update. So since we last met, we have a Facebook page that has gone live. So this isn't the intent on this page is as a funnel to our page more than anything else. This is where a lot of people engage in what's going on around them. Oddly enough, they don't start at our webpage before they go out into the world. So if we do have some new information to share, then we'll provide it in both locations. So we'll have it on Facebook and on our page as well. And then also I've been sending links along for anything that makes sense that would be helpful to not only workers and citizens and our residents, but also small businesses. So as funding opportunities become available, as information, if we have any information on stimulus checks, these sorts of things, that the Department of Commerce sent out an email yesterday, and I sent that along. So we're trying to provide as much relevant information as possible to in as many ways as possible to help out those that whether they use Facebook or start at our webpage. I've also asked Ben, as the community development lead, to take the lead on working directly with the EDC, the SDA, to just really keep his ear to the ground on funding opportunities, resources for, again, for businesses and for residents and workers. I had a list of other things, one moment. This is one interesting thing about running a virtual meeting is I have a computer in front of me now and I can buzz all around. The county and the incident command structure has been doing a great job of taking the lead, handling ordering for PPE, keeping the message consistent. The structure itself is working great. So that it makes it easy for the city to focus on what's going to happen next. So what I'm really starting to focus on now is, even though we're not exactly sure when the gates are going to drop, when we're going to things can kind of start to get back to normal, we want to make sure that we're ready, find some ways to drive the right kind of traffic, but then also make sure that our business owners have the support that they need. So I've already reached out to Kelly, the new director at the SDA, and then Ben has already been working with her. And then I've also connected Kelly with Ken up at the lodge. And I had a phone meeting with Ken at the lodge on Friday. So just trying to just really lean on and build up that partnership so that we can all work together to try to make things, to get back to normal as quickly as it makes sense. So I've been keeping an eye on, as I'm sure we all have, on the way things are going around the country and in the state. Nobody really knows when the all clear is going to go and what all clear is going to mean. I've heard of a rolling re-entry, a gradual re-entry. I think the governor kind of played his cards already when he closed the schools. You know, it wasn't going to have anybody back before June. There was a doctor on the one of the morning incident meetings that said the models that they're looking at that they feel comfortable with show the stay at home through the end of May. I don't know if that's going to pan out. The president is chomping at the bit, but then he's already gotten some pushback from governors saying that he doesn't really have the right to tell the states when it's time to come outside. So keeping as close of an eye on those updates as we can, but again, doing the things that we can do, and that is trying to build up a response to get going as quickly as possible. So one of the things we've already talked about is perhaps a Stevenson Strong, not a benefit, but a campaign. Kelly at the SDA said maybe once it's okay to, even if it means you don't have to stay at home, but you still have to practice some social distancing, maybe we find a way to put together a Stay Strong party, a gathering of some sort. Again, the other part that this is the new normal, being socially distant. I'm not sure how quickly our minds are going to wrap around doing something different than that. So it's all still one step at a time, but trying to still keep our eyes up and still looking forward and trying to be a great resource for the city. So that's my update. Did you guys have any comment or question? All right.
I- May I
go
say
ahead.
something?
Go
Sorry,
for
I was raising my hand. Maybe that's not the best way to do it. I just really wanted to say thank you to Carl for the ongoing updates on the construction on Russell Street, and to Liana for the ongoing updates from ICS, and also to you, Scott, for your responsiveness with my request for the technology update. I feel like I'm being heard, and that is really nice. So I just want to say thank you.
This is, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. I can normally look around the room and see if you guys are trying to make eye contact or if you've got a thought brewing. So jump in if you have a comment. If not, I'm gonna keep moving along.
Did you hear my comment, or did I get cut off?
Oh no, I heard it.
Okay,
Thank
cool.
you very much for your comments. It was much
Thanks.
appreciated. All right. Yes.
Can the public, this is Rick May. I really have to say the same thing as Amy's saying, is that anytime you guys can push the technology, oftentimes you've got really great council members that, maybe they need to be on vacation, but they can call in. And if you set it up so it becomes much easier, I think that's going to pay itself back in benefits. And, if it's $700 to be able to do it, that's probably the $700 best dollars you guys can spend.
Thanks, Rick. All right. That brings up Carl.
Well, before we move on, it looked like there was a letter to the governor kind of in this COVID section before Carl's section. So I just didn't know if we were moving on past that or what.
That letter was
Matt,
part of the
by the way.
COVID update. That was a letter that the mayor had signed in response to the COVID.
Ballsy. Okay.
All right, Carl.
Okay, we're good. Everybody can hear me. So I think the biggest change that the wastewater treatment plant has seen is the reduction to the tune of 44% of the influent coming in. Probably, I'm guessing, of course, directly related to the lodge and to LDB being shut down. We saw a die-off of bug life, if you will, due to the lack of food. I put that in the notes, but other than that, we really haven't seen a lot of changes. I thought that the lack of rain in March when compared to February might attribute to that, but we were only down 0.4 of an inch. So yeah, quite a reduction in influent coming in. So I think Amy kind of requested, some data. So it's about the only data I have there. I got a little bit more on the water side, but I'll leave that for the staff update. But wastewater treatment plant still plugging along, still doing good. BOD, as you can see, it's down overall, but it's up since February. But that is probably attributed to a little warmer temperatures on the influent. So that was to be expected. Biosolid hauling has gone back to normal. As far as early on, if you remember, tried to get the inventory down just because it really didn't know where things were going. We're back on a normal schedule. So we're just going to keep plugging along.
All right, thank you.
Great job, Carl. Thank you.
Thanks. This is really tough. It's like I'm looking at the Brady Bunch. I don't know. I don't know who said that, but thank you. And thank you, Amy, for your comments earlier.
Are you guys feeling like safe and protected, and you have the equipment that you need, and it's an okay working environment?
It is. Thanks for asking. I mean, I think I touched base on that earlier. Those practices, of course, were basically already in place. So really business as usual when it comes to protection down there.
All right, Ben.
Okay, this is Ben. First of many times you guys are going to hear from me tonight, but I warned you about that at the last meeting. So the agenda item here is the zoning code update. This is the one that would incorporate a bunch of, or two of the interpretations that have been made, align the city's policies for townhomes with its policies for other multifamily residential dwellings. And the big one was making the moratorium permanent prohibition for single family residences in the downtown zone. The Planning Commission had worked their way through all of the issues that were associated with that leading into the last meeting, but they were still trying to figure out what to do with existing homes that might be in the downtown zone. They created a new use category for that called legacy homes, and they were permitting legacy homes to continue, to expand, to rebuild. Didn't want to impact those homeowners at all. The last policy issue that they were struggling with on that was how to deal with homes that might convert from a residential use to a business use. At their March meeting, they were leaning toward not allowing it to convert back to a residential use once it had converted to a business use. Going into this April meeting, that was the key consideration they were going to make. Staff was recommending to them that they do allow the reconversion, that the prohibition would be treating a symptom and not a cause. So allow that conversion and focus efforts other places. They held a public hearing remotely, virtually, and at the conclusion of that, they had some pushback from making any decision on that during the COVID crisis until people could be in the same room and talk through some of the issues. So they were really responsive to that. They didn't think that it was a necessary item to take action on. So they postponed making a recommendation on it until at least June, hopeful that by June they could get going on that. They already had discussions about if things are a go to reopen the day after the Planning Commission, then maybe they'll just delay the whole meeting until after that point instead of losing a whole month. So, but with that, they haven't given you a report on how they review this zoning code amendment. So per our own code, it would say that you shouldn't act on that. That means that the moratorium, which is due to expire on May 17th, will expire unless you guys take some sort of action. And just wanted you to grapple with that. We didn't prepare an ordinance that would extend that moratorium leading into this meeting, but wanted some direction from you all.
Do we have
Personally,
go ahead.
Sorry, go. No, Amy, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if it sounds like we do have the ability to extend that moratorium legally.
We do, but we have to have a public hearing first before we extend it. The other way to do it without a public hearing is to wait for it to expire, adopt a new moratorium, and then set the date for a public hearing in the future.
This is Robert. Are we taking any building permits at this time? I thought we put a stay on accepting any permits.
We're accepting permits, but they're not issuing. So let's see, we're accepting applications, but we're not issuing permits.
So Ken, if somebody came in post moratorium and applied, but we didn't grant the permit at that time, would we be barred from taking a negative action on the permit later?
They're going to be vested in whatever the state of the ordinance is at the time.
Okay.
So that, yeah, that's going to be their vested right.
So we need to either extend and have a public hearing or you run the risk that nobody submits an application during that time period.
Yeah, I think that's right. You know, during the COVID, the stay home, stay healthy order, you're pretty limited about being able to do public hearings at this point anyway. So I don't know if you have a lot of options available.
Yeah.
So we can, excuse me, we can extend and then schedule a public meeting in the future?
Just as long as you, I mean, the public hearing would have to take place after the governor lifts the order, or if he provides in some subsequent order that that we can conduct public hearings. But on the AG opinion that followed the governor's order, they pretty much made clear that public hearings were not going to be permitted during the stay home, stay healthy period.
And in either case, both actions would require a special council meeting unless you're fine with the risk of, I think it's about 4 days between, our council meeting is on May 21st.
And that's when the moratorium expires. The moratorium expires on the 17th.
This is Robert. I mean, I don't see anything coming in those 4 days, but it is a gamble. So
This is Paul. I agree with Robert.
This is Amy. Agreed.
Annie
Welcome.
agreed.
I'm reluctant to lean on moratorium. If we wouldn't have been shackled with a pandemic, we would have dealt with this in a timely fashion and it would have just gone away the way it was supposed to. It was a tool at the time, but to extend it all, to keep extending it as a tool is not something I'm really interested in right now. There was a couple of things that popped up that made it the option. I'm not keen on it being the option anymore. I'm with you guys. Let's see what happens.
So is that direction to prepare a moratorium for the May council meeting then and see what happens in those 4 days rather than holding a special meeting?
I see lots of shaking heads.
that would be my vote
Yes.
or recommendation or direction.
Okay.
This is Matthew. I don't see the cost versus benefit here of paying to have an extra, that special meeting. I'm for risking a couple days.
Perfect. Thank you. And so just so I'm keep the timeline here. So there's the potential for a public meeting in June so that the Planning Commission can address this and then have something for us by the end of June for that city council meeting.
That's the understanding I have, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to roll past a motion to approve. So looks like you're up again, Ben.
Unmuting again. So this next item is the tree planting grant that we've been talking about. So we'll let the staff report speak mostly for itself there. $20,000 from Washington DNR requires council approval.
Motion to approve the grant in the amount of 20,000. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Say your name.
Robert Muth.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Annie
Oh,
second.
All right, around the table, aye or nay, Matthew,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Annie,
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Thank you so much. All right, Carl.
This one should have been Ben also. We corrected that today.
Okay, Ben.
Yep. This is a contract with WSP engineering firm. They formerly had been Berger ABAM. This is for the design of the First Street sidewalk and overlook project. 80% of this $185,306 is paid for through federal sources. We would hope to, the plan is to go to construction next summer. We need to be done with 50% design by the middle of this summer, and that all the timing looks like it's really going to work out for that. One heads up on this, you might anticipate one change to this agreement. We're working to build in some additional amenities to the project in the form of a historic timeline that would be built into the tread of the pathway. Funding for that, we're reaching out to Burlington Northern for to see if their foundation will support that. If that part of the project gets legs, then we would ask for an amendment to this agreement at that time.
Hey, Ben, it's Robert. I apologize. What page does that start on?
72.
Thank you. I'm scrolling the wrong direction.
And I'm sorry, this is Amy. Just to clarify, I'm looking at the description of the work. This is completely separate from Levens Point, right? This is just all of the stuff from Columbia up. Is that correct?
Levens Point at the waterfront, it is separate from that. It goes from Columbia to the east and connects with the cutoff footpath in that area. And if you remember, we've talked about in the past, there's a guardrail at the top of that footpath that prevents a lot of usage there. So this is dealing with that guardrail issue. It's adding vegetated curb extensions at Columbia Street and then mid-block behind the hardware store, much like they are in front of the hardware store.
Mhm.
And then an overlook in that area to capture the views.
This is Matthew, and you may have said this earlier. I was doing a lot of scrolling to get caught up. Was this amount already included in the budget for the year when we had discussed that at the end of 2019, or is this higher than anticipated, or what that may be?
This matches the grant request. So when we put in, we anticipated 180 plus for that. So it matches the request that we had at that time.
And we put the grant in when?
I believe that was in May of 18.
Mm.
Thank you.
Ben, is the contract amount the 185,306 then with WSP?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Amy. Ben, does this include any of the decorative? Is it in keeping with what we've got on 2nd Street and in other parts of town in terms of the decorative street lamps and jeweled this and that and other stuff, the signage?
Yeah, the grant proposal really focused on that. We had Wallace Engineering come out and walk through the project with us. Paul participated in that walkthrough to get an idea of what it was going to be like. We identified the basalt pillars and really making this corridor look a lot more like 2nd Street in the grant proposal. So money should go a long way with this toward everything there. Like I said, we're working on bringing in additional sources, either if there are overruns or to reduce the city match to that. BNSF is one of those sources. We'll test the SDA, the Downtown Association, to see whether they want to participate in any of this too, or whether they're going to save all of that for the plaza, or just how that relationship ends up working out for these types of projects going forward. But 80% of this contract is funded, and then we're looking for more too.
Ben, this is Annie. So 80% is funded, and so roughly the city is responsible for the remaining 35,000. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And this one, just to explain why Carl pushed it off to me. So I had been shepherding this through getting the grants and doing all of this WashDOT paperwork to accept federal funds. And that is all finished up basically with your approval tonight. And Carl and I have been working with WSP on the scope and you know, transforming the concept into a project that can be built. So you'll probably be getting these updates more from him later, but getting it through these WashDOT hurdles has been something I've been working on.
And when would this when would this project begin? What's the intent?
The design would start ASAP. So that'd start with surveyors going out to identify existing conditions. We need to be 50% complete with design by either July 31st or August 1st. And then that'll give us time to finalize the design and get it advertised for bids early next year. So next construction window.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, is anybody prepared to make a motion?
It's be Robert Muth. Motion to approve local agency A&E professional services consultant agreement in an amount not to exceed $185,306.
Oh, this is Paul, I second.
We have a first and a second. Any other comment? All right, around the table, aye or nay. Matthew?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Annie?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, Ben, looks like you again.
I'll roll into this one too. So there's a subdivision proposal that has been reviewed by the Planning Commission, and they have recommended your approval. For subdivisions, it's the process was already a two-touch system. So the first touch is to accept the Planning Commission has submitted you a recommendation and to schedule a meeting. We are asking you to schedule that at your next regularly scheduled council meeting on May 21st. At that meeting, it's just a public meeting where you're looking at the project in more detail. And after you hold that meeting, if you're not satisfied with the Planning Commission's recommendation, then you can schedule your own public hearing and conduct your own review on that. So step one, though, is scheduling the next meeting when you would review it. Again, you could hold a special meeting, but you don't have to. I don't think that it's necessary for this one either.
Ben, again, I apologize. What page are we on in the?
157. That means that 72 through 156 were all that WashDOT contract.
That's what. Okay. And I'm only apologizing because I didn't read about the subdivision before, you know, a little while ago, so I was trying to find it again. So we're looking at 4 single-family residential lots up where? Ryan Allen between Foster. Okay.
Yeah. And it's 4 lots plus 1 for future development. So they came in initially with a proposal to just do 4 lots, and in talking to them at the pre-application stage, they're going to be doing the same amount of investment for 4 lots as they'd be doing for 5. So they're coming in with the subdivision proposal instead of the short plot.
Okay. And it'd be SR1 would be the zone for where they want to build.
Yeah, SR, yeah.
The recommendation from planning was to go ahead and at least approve this initial plan.
Approve with conditions. We are, between now and the next meeting, we'll be talking more with the applicant and the applicant's engineers and our engineers to make sure that those conditions are going to be viable for the project.
Are all 5 lots accessed off Ryan Allen, or?
4 lots are accessed off of a current private road that would be improved to public road standards. One lot is just reserved for future, and so that would still be off Ryan Allen, but there's no intent to use that.
So what's the private road that would be the access road?
Holstrom Road, the Well Road.
Oh, right.
So it's finally going to get approved? Okay, come on, you're burying the lead here. That road was supposed to get approved 2 years ago.
This
you
is
know.
the first third of it.
Oh my God, he's still,
We are working
Carl,
with.
did you grant him a C of O, or is he still living in that house in a TCO?
We're working towards a C of O. I granted him the C of O. He's got some work to do on the maintenance agreement.
Okay.
Things have been slow on their end, getting back to us with just basically tweaks to the agreement.
Shocker. Oh. Personally, I want him to finish that whole road per the agreement that he signed 5 years ago before we allow them more access off that road. I mean, he's never put the money into it that he was supposed to. He came begging because his mortgage was due to roll from construction to perm, and we gave him that TCO. And I think several of us have been kicking ourselves since we agreed to that, because we haven't gotten the homeowner, the lot owner, to do what they agreed to do 5 years ago. Sorry, it's a little more. Annie, Matthew, I don't know if you guys know about that
No,
parcel up there. So
no, I don't, Robert. Could you tell me the person's name?
it's JP Holstrom and his wife. So they
Oh,
built the
okay.
house up off the road, and part of the terms when they started the build up there was that they had to complete that road, the entry road, which is called Holstrom Road now, off of Ryan Allen back to their property, and put it at city grade.
Mhm.
And then he came to us begging because he hadn't done that, and he needed to roll out of his construction loan to his permanent loan. And we were reluctant as hell. And then we agreed to grant him a temporary certificate of occupancy so he could roll his loan. And that was, damn, that had to be 4 years ago now.
It was the last temporary. It was the last TCO I ever gave out.
Yeah. So, it's just, that's frustrating because I sat there with JP and I said, you signed this agreement with the city 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and now you want to undo what you agreed to do. And I got extremely frustrated about that. That we had an agreement in place, and then we were being asked to change the agreement, and it wasn't fair to the city, in my opinion.
Was he supposed to improve? I don't think he was supposed to improve the part that the Tolliver subdivision is on.
It's west to the Tollivers.
It's west of all this, Robert.
Or east. It's east. Yeah.
Yes, the Tolliver subdivision is west. Where he was supposed to improve doesn't come into play into this Tolliver. I think we're calling it the Tolliver subdivision now.
But that was my question. If the Tolliver subdivision is being that 4 lots in this proposed subdivision are going to be accessed off a Holstrom Road, that road is still not at city standards.
The part of that subdivision, though, it has to be brought up to city standards.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had that deal 6 years ago and he didn't bring it up to city standards. So that's my point.
Not correct me if I'm wrong, but not on this portion.
Okay.
And this, not on this portion of the road. And it's not JP that has to bring it up. This is a different development.
Yeah, I want to
different.
I want to underline that of Carl too. This is Ben. This property owner is not Holstrom that was tied to that improvement. This is a separate owner. In the background of all this, we knew that this was going to trigger changes to that whole situation, starting with the road maintenance agreement that was in place between those 3 property owners that have access to that road, and then the city who accesses that road because of the well. And so we've held a meeting with them earlier on in the project. Basically, with Tolliver subdivision, if it is completed, they would complete part of that road, and they don't want to be responsible for the maintenance of the road as it continues on just to serve the other property owners. And so we're working to renegotiate that road maintenance agreement and have some very clear road improvement plans in place. Ken has been helping us out with all the documents there. Those haven't come to you yet because, like Carl said, they haven't gotten us what their responses to that.
Okay, I guess I'm just trying to track in my head that, so we're gonna have an access road that will be city standard constructed up to a point and then stop, and then we still have the fire, life, health, safety access portion all the way back to JP's house, and that's still a problem because it's not up to standards. Is that right, Carl?
So that's what we're working through, Robert. On this Tolliver portion, they'll go in, they'll have a temporary turnaround on the Tolliver portion of it. Beyond
Okay.
that, part of this road maintenance agreement is we have to have apparatus turnaround at the end, which is right in front of our well, which JP's working with us. He does have the room for that turnaround. The fire chief has looked at it, I believe, and there is room for it. So it'll work out. We're working on that with Ken as a separate issue of this Tolliver subdivision.
Okay. Well, then I'm gonna step back and trust you guys because you're the smart guys on that one, but I'm feeling like, once again, you know, we got, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, across the street, Loads Road, or not Loads Road, but, you know, his street that we never do bring up to city standards, and he's there every, January to scream at us to get it done. And yet JP is obligated to do this under a written agreement with the city and has never done it. So I'm hearing what you guys are telling me. It's basically piecemeal in, but if you're telling me JP's working with you and we're gonna actually get this thing done, that would be nice to know.
So maybe between Ben and Carl, you guys can include an update on efforts along those lines at the same time that we consider the Tolliver subdivision review at the next meeting on May 21st.
10-4.
Yep.
Is Tolliver the one he started that development? He cleared that property and was gonna build this out like maybe 5 years ago? Does that ring a bell? Is it the same guy?
Yeah, sold to a different owner, same property.
Same property, different owner. Okay.
And I apologize, the attachments to the planning commission's recommendation didn't get buttoned into the packet for you. So that had the plat and where it was.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry to be a pain there.
No, it's good to bring that up because there are some legacy remnants that we have there's been enough changeover that I'm glad that you're around to remember that and bring that up. So good points all the way around. So yeah, at the next meeting, since we're going to be looking at Tolliver anyway, and that's what triggered your discussion points.
Okay.
And we'll work on that at the next meeting.
And Amy, remind me of the guy who lives across the street. God dang it.
Prosser.
Thank you, Dave Prosser. Thank you. I know we haven't seen him for a while.
How could you forget his name?
I know.
Mental
it's
block.
just- there's too much history there. I've tried to block it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so so that's an official motion to set a date. Okay, I would entertain a motion.
This is Matthew. Motion to set the date of May 21st, 2020 to review the Tolliver subdivision application.
This is Paul. I will second it.
We have a first and a second. Is there any more discussion? All right, aye or nay around the table. Matthew,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Annie,
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Thank you guys very much. In record speed, looks like the building permits. Carl, did anything of note in the building permits?
No, not really. Of course, everything's slowed down quite a bit.
Yeah.
But no, nothing really to note.
All right, and then Liana, did you want to go over the finance report?
So I've included the finance report for Q1. It will definitely change between now and the next report, which will be Q2. Things were looking pretty good as the year was progressing, but we'll see sort of how March, we won't necessarily see the hit for taxes nor for water sewer revenues. Neither will we see them in April because we both of those months we billed for either usage in February or base fees. So in May is when we'll start seeing some of the changes from March, and then in the next few months after that. Again, I'm continuing to work on just checking the numbers that are coming in to make sure that the projections that we currently have for the COVID impact are still accurate and up to date. Right now, it's still looking like it's going to stay at a 10% revenue hit, and most of that being for sales tax and lodging tax. Because some events are canceling, it should even out for the lodging tax, and we would be able to absorb that. We also have enough of a buffer. We try to at least make sure that our reserves cover the projects that are going out that year, because we never know when events like this are going to happen, or Eagle Creek Fire, etc. So everything seems to be on track. We're looking at expenditures. Of course, the fire department, Rob is on the phone, and in his update, he provides a list of things that they've been purchasing. In his report, I think they've spent, they're getting close to $3,000. I think it's $2,600 right now. All of those costs are split with Fire District 2. However, all of the revenue flows through, all of the expenses flow through the city, and then we bill Fire District 2 for their half. And all of those are, again, our PPE related to the COVID outbreak, and we're tracking those expenses separately from everything else, as well as our time separately to, again, try to recoup some of the costs when funding becomes available.
And Leona, this is Robert. I know the first half or the first of the two payments of property taxes are due April 30th. And what's the time frame we usually see our payment from the county after they collected those taxes?
I believe we'll see them in May. So they, if they get the payments by April, we tend to see them the following month. I can,
Well, yeah, my question was, it's not a rolling. It's like if Scott paid his taxes last week, would we get that percentage of the city tax money in a random check from the county, or do they wait until a certain day after the closing?
We get payments every month for
Okay.
property tax. So if you pay it in, people that paid in
Whenever it
March,
comes
I'll
in.
get it in April. And
Okay.
yeah. Mhm.
Have you heard anything from the county that they're anticipating not receiving what they typically see for the April payments?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't know the number of people that have their property taxes included in their mortgage payments. So I don't anticipate those people being impacted. If you look at people that that are on Social Security, those payments haven't been impacted. So I don't see that their cash flow is impacted for tax payments, and they're already on any sort of discounts that they can get for property taxes. There is an application for people to submit to the treasurer if they want to extend their payment or extend the deadline from April 30th to June 30th. And you really just fill out the affidavit, David, say that you're not able to pay, and they're processing it. They're not asking any questions. If you're having problems, they're just taking it at face value and, again, allowing for that extension. One of the reasons why they're not delaying it for everyone is because a lot of the fire districts depend on this money. And if they don't get the money, they can't then pay for expenses and items related to COVID and the outbreak that they're responding to, and same with the EMS and everything. So a lot of the districts, their sole revenue source is property taxes, and they heavily rely on that money, so they can't delay it for everyone.
Have you heard, they've reported back to you, we're seeing a lot of people ask for the affidavit to extend through June 30th. I'm just wondering what kind of net effect you may see in your Q1 report here.
It came, I believe they just put it on their website a couple days ago.
Okay.
So I haven't heard any feedback on how that's what they've received to date.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting times.
Yep.
This is Amy. May I ask a question?
Please do.
I don't know if this is for Liana or maybe this is for Annie, but I'm wondering about the chamber and the chamber budget and the chamber deliverables through the TAC funding. I know the chamber has been doing a lot of things that we didn't contract with them necessarily to do. And there are a lot of things that probably are not going to happen, for which they won't need budget. So I didn't know if anybody has an update on what's happening with any of those monies.
So right now, so when we give the money to the chamber, half of the money that is set aside goes it's what we give them to run the chamber as a whole. And so there's no receipts or anything associated with that. It's just what we fund them on a monthly basis. The deliverables portion is related to the Stevenson Business Association, and that would be for Blues and Brews. And so because that has been impacted, they won't be spending time on that. And any expenses though that they have put towards it, we will still reimburse because we understand that those costs have been incurred. But anything, so I don't know what's going to take up their time and how they're going to make up some of that revenue, but typically they haven't been paid for the hours associated with those events, just the costs associated with those events for the SBA portion of it. So from what the city gives them, they shouldn't see that much of an impact, and it shouldn't overly hurt them.
And what
Hey,
about,
Amy, is Blues Brews canceled for the year?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it was.
yeah. And what about the value the city receives for the monies that we've spent in terms of that contract? Because the point of the chamber is to promote the city as a tourist destination, and obviously we're closed for business right now. So does that money, are there deliverables that are like kind of being held and will be rolled out later, or do we need to have some sort of conversation about where we go from here in terms of the contract and the money that's already been allocated? In other words, I don't want to continue to pay monthly for a service that we're not receiving.
I feel right now they're doing a very good job. They're the key agency that's holding it to ensure that our businesses are ready to open when the tourists are ready to come back. And so I see that there is value in that. They are continuing to post on the Facebook page and Instagram. So they are continuing to promote Stevenson, saying that, you know, when everything's back up and running, we're still here for you. So I feel that we still are getting the value, and we're working with them to, again, when things open back up, hit the ground running. And I feel that that's of utmost importance to make sure that the businesses that we do have don't close, so that there's nothing for the tourists to do when they get here.
And Amy, this is Annie. They just rolled out virtual coffee. What did they have in the morning? Their coffee break and their happy hours too. So they're still holding those two events for businesses. They're just being done virtually instead of in person. And they are also a gatekeeper for all of the COVID-19 information as it comes from both the state and local entities. They have them on their weekly broadcast to keep people up to date on things that are happening in Stevenson as well. So they are still attempting, and I think with great effort, to keep businesses on people's mind and to be supporting them during this process. So yeah, I think we're getting our money's worth still.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think the chamber has done a fabulous job at stepping up, and they are a key linchpin, and I recognize that. But I also want to make sure that we're actually getting what we paid for. Like, it's a big contract. It's like $180,000 or something. It's not small. It's not chump change.
Right.
So, you know, doing some email posts and some Facebook events, you know, that's not $180,000 worth of deliverables in my mind.
Right.
So I'm not saying that, you know, anything necessarily needs to be done other than have a conversation and make sure that, like, you know, we are spending that money wisely.
Yeah, great questions. I'm glad you did bring them up, because that's absolutely true. That's what we're here for as a council, is to make certain that the money we're delegating to these other agencies is being used wisely. So I appreciate that.
Does anybody know what the hit is on the TAC dollars with the lodge closed? Kara's telling me it's not pretty as she comes up here to sit. So apparently she can't go to work, so it doesn't have any guests. So we're not getting any dollars, but we're not collecting any water. I mean, we're losing revenue.
Sales tax.
Right. So I can give you the latest updates that I have for the revenue. Again, overall, it's 10% to our O&M, but for lodging tax right now, I have $118,000, and that's based on 2 months of no usage, and then a slight decrease in revenue for the rest of the year. Again, depending on how this all rolls out and how things shake out, it'll probably be adjusted. So sales tax, again, I have $126,000, and that's split between the general fund and the street fund. And then I have $51,000 decrease for water sales and $70,000 decrease for sewer sales. So that's $121,000 hit to the water sewer budget. So again, overall, I have $370,000 impact to the city. Again, that's for O&M funds. We still have our capital projects running through, but.
Yeah, we don't get those dollars back. We're not going to play catch up. So once the lodge opens up and starts selling rooms again, we're not going to see, oh, now we get our monies back. We're getting back to norm. So we're going to have to adjust at the end of the year on the budget for next year for sure.
Right, and I've been attending a lot of webinars regarding how to forecast, where to pull information. I mean, I've been doing looking at sort of what Wells Fargo has been putting up at their site and other economists and everything as far as how they're going to project, especially because our industry is so tourism based. One of the things, and I think you also saw the email that was sent out by the boat company, and I'm forgetting the name of the one. But so they're still gonna be moving forward with their boat, with their cruises. They're just gonna have less people to allow for more social distancing, and then some of the trends or some of the language that I've been hearing coming out is that people are going to travel more locally when they're done with all of this instead of internationally. So again, we'll see how it all happens and how it all shakes out. One thing of note too is that we're one of the first states to be impacted by this. So when we open, the rest of the states might still be in their shutdown order. So again, trying to see how that happens and how we slowly open things back up, and the impact that that's going to have on Stevenson.
And we have been keeping an eye out on any government funding. What was the fund that we were talking about this morning, Liana?
So the CARES Act?
No, the one that we didn't have to report, but the other cities did or had to file or.
Yeah, so that's the CARES Act. There's the $500,000, or sorry, 500,000 population. There's a deadline for people to file by the end of tomorrow, because we're less than 500,000 population, and same with the county. We would get funds from the state. There's about, I think, in the email I sent, there was on the COVID update, there was a link or an email from the Washington Association of Counties, and they say that there's about $1.3 billion that will go to Washington State directly for local governments related to COVID funding. I don't know, the state doesn't have any sort of guidelines as far as how they're going to divvy that up, or who's going to get it. And it's up to $1.3 billion. So not all of that may be spent. We'll see what shakes out. Again, the Association of Washington Cities is in contact with the governor's office. And so as soon as they come up with guidelines and forms and all of that, I'm sure they will definitely send information out to us. And I'm sure there'll probably be another webinar on how to navigate it all.
Well, I'm sure I saw the PPP money that they first allocated, those already gone. So if you were in the queue with an application as a small business for any of those monies and you haven't signed your loan docs, you are not getting any funds unless they come back and replenish.
They're working on legislation, but again, it's caught up in the,
McConnell
process.
said he's taking everybody out of session, so.
Yeah. Caught up in the process.
Yeah, well, that's it. The whole process though, right now, if you didn't get loan docs from your lender for the PPP money, you will not see those dollars until the second funding, if they have a second funding. 385 billion spent in 12 days.
Yep.
Amazing. Yes, and then for the 4-week period ending April 15th, is it 15th or the 13th, 22 million people claimed that they were out of work. And the last time, the last time that there was a high, it was in 1989, and it was 2.7 million people claiming that they were out of work. So this is serious, millions and billions. So yeah, it's very interesting to see how not only on an economic level, but on a social level, how this is going to thaw out.
I did see the top 7 insurance companies for auto insurances are going to issue rebate checks. Do we have who do we insure our vehicles with?
It's a pool, Washington City.
So it'll just go to the pool. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that won't be any money back. All right.
On the plus side, we're getting our money's worth from the sheriff's office, 10 traffic stops. Wahoo!
I like the
That was-
26 medical emergencies. I'm like, everybody's saying, I'm sick. Come give me a test.
And then
Speaking
another-
of which, I'm sorry, PSA announcement. I asked Leona because somebody had asked me, is there a place to go and get a test in Skamania County?
So the other part that we learned, we learned on Tuesday that the health department was getting tests. Today they reported that they got 200 tests, and they're working on setting up testing at Skamania County, so at the Hegewald Center, that possibly a drive-through option, but they'll be starting to do tests next week.
Wait a minute, so a recap on that. So somebody asked me, there's a potential for 200 tests to be administered on a drive-through basis, possibly at the Hegewald Center within a week or so.
Yes. If you follow Skamania County,
That's timely.
well, if you follow Skamania County Community Health on Facebook, they'll post information there.
Yeah, I don't do Facebook. Sorry.
There's a lot of information as well on the Skamania County page. If you just go skamaniacounty.org, click on the updates at the top, and then it'll take you to various websites with information. And then also I try to put out in my daily updates as well what's been said. So as soon as I figure out more information on that, I'll let you know. But right now they are still sending people to the White Salmon North Shore because in North Shore and White Salmon, they have a separate entrance. So they're able to separate people if they're coming in for COVID related symptoms. They can do it at Stevenson, but it's not ideal.
And then on a side note, the county health department or community health, their website it's kind of blog style. It's like journal style. The last time I looked, it was pretty well done, and the information was easy well, they're doing a great job of getting the information out, but because it's like a blog or like a journal, it's not, you kind of have to scroll a little bit to dig deep on some of the numbers, but they're doing their best too to keep their website up to date. And another thing that the sheriff brought up, and it's something to keep in mind, Skamania County is still only at 3, but the part that we need to remember is that the first person their 2-week period has already expired. The second person, their 2-week period is already expired. The third person was a family member of one of the first 2 and has already been in quarantine for almost a week. So even though we have, only 3 positive cases, 2 of them have already moved on and have antibodies. So the numbers don't necessarily reflect what's actually going on. They're not actively sick.
Mm-hmm.
Although to think that those are the
Leanna,
only
when you
people that are sick.
mentioned-
Go ahead, sorry.
This is Julie, the public. Sorry, Liana, you mentioned you have daily updates. Could you talk more about where those show up?
So these are daily updates that I send to council. Anders has been taking some of them when there's more information other than there's no update. He's been taking those and putting them on the city's website. And now that we have a Facebook page, he'll be pushing those onto our Facebook page as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so administrator and staff reports.
Hey, we're gonna start doing all our meetings on Zoom if they go this quick, just letting everybody know. I'm gonna vote hard for this. If this is how you do it.
I was talking to Johanna earlier. I said they're gonna like this so much. We're gonna.
I'll do a drive by Annie's house to pick up dinner, but God, I'm sitting right here.
Yeah, Annie still needs to do dinner.
I know. So we'll do a drive by. We'll just pick it up and then we go back here and sit in
There
our
you
Zoom
go.
meeting. Yeah.
I'm all for that.
Everyone can have their cup out the window and just scoop whatever into it, right?
Yeah. There we go. Apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt staff reports.
Carl, you're listed first, buddy.
All right, let's start with Russell Street. So Russell Street's clipping right along as well.
Carl, I have pictures if you want me to show them.
Oh
yeah, go ahead. if you want to put them on the screen.
Yep.
So today, if anybody's been by, the curb mid block west side is done. The curb mid block east side is about 3/4 of the way done. So what you see there to the left where it's formed up is now concrete.
Wow.
Almost down to the post office. And there's a little section to the north that's left. But the exciting part is next Tuesday, Wednesday, sidewalks will be poured on the west side. And then immediately following, and I'm hoping by the end of next week, we'll have sidewalks both mid-block on the west and east side. Pedestrians have been ultra patient with this project. If anybody's had to walk through there, it's not the easiest thing to walk through and to navigate. The crew has been very helpful getting people through there. Post office patrons have been enduring, a little bit of noise and, a little bit of confusion following the cones going in and out, but kudos to them because it's helping the project move a lot quicker than anticipated. So
curious, who did you get to bring concrete over? I see Cal Portland truck, but they came across the bridge.
Calport and yeah, we had to go through. I had to sign some documentation saying it's essential product or a project that they can come up. They also send out a quality control person to make sure that truck is going where it's supposed to be going and doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Did we have to pay more? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted, because I know like Hood River Gravel and Sand, they shut down. They won't even come over the bridge.
They shut down, and that didn't matter. This company uses Cal Portland.
Okay.
They were going to use them no matter what.
Okay, so we didn't get a change order or an uptick because of the special signature. Thank you. And unfortunately for Bonnie, I know this was a project she was very worried about, and it's sad that she's closed during this time, but thankfully then she hasn't had to endure any, undue impact to the business.
Right.
Correct.
Well, and that's the part, I don't know if you guys remember that part or noticed that, but because of all that's going on and, a couple of businesses closing, they were willing to just say, take the hit and close the entire street instead of doing half of it at a time. Right. And the contractor bumped up their crew to actually, so not only take advantage, but to really try to speed things along to get this over as quickly as possible for us.
Are we paying an acceleration change order?
No.
Thank you. All right.
And then I don't know if Carl talked about it in last month's update, but also with the contractor, the person that was doing the flagging was helping people up and down the sidewalk too, right? Wasn't that part of it? There's flagging supervisor. How did that go?
The traffic control supervisor actually was living with a tenant in Harry Shoemaker's apartments above the Pioneer for the project. So man, it worked out really well. Yeah, she was literally right at home. Now, since we shut the street down, she's no longer there. So crew members and the inspectors alike, myself, have been helping public as much as we can. But still, it's a little intimidating if you are walking and you roll up on construction site / war zone to walk through that. But
what's the ETA on completion now? Just curious.
We keep the schedule is condensing. Now there are hurdles because due to COVID with subs trying to get them in and out. There's a lot of unanswered questions. Okay. But to be honest, we don't have a good answer. The contractor does it. The contractor does not have a good answer for us as far as how condensed this schedule is going to be.
What's it showing on the 3-week right now? Is there a deadline or is there a completion date that's on a 3-week schedule?
No, not yet. No. I think I put that on my update as well. When it comes to pavement restoration, it's not on the 3-week schedule yet. But as that comes up, definitely going to be some coordination towards the end of railroad. There is a window, depending on the weather, that we're going to have the street shut down and let that pavement cool before we get traffic on it. So that's going to be a lot of coordination, with truck traffic. regardless of where we're at with the economy coming back or not, we're still going to have to schedule, and there's still trucks going in and out.
So Carl, this is Annie. This is the contractor that we all had some concerns about, right?
Reservations.
Reservations. Thank you. In your opinion, how are they doing?
In my opinion, they're great. I mean, absolutely great. It's a small crew. They're very conscientious of their work. Wallace is seeing the same thing, Wallace Engineering.
Mhm.
We had a discussion with Wes, who's an engineer that designed this, and he was just checking in, and that was the report he's getting from their inspectors. But no, to be honest, and I've been on a few sideways ones, this one is going really good. And it does come down to the foreman that's on site. The foreman that's on site he is all about it. So
good. That's good to hear.
Honestly, couldn't be more happy with him. So
Super's
yeah,
make and break a job.
I hate saying that. I hate jinxing things, but so far so good.
Good. That's good to hear. Thank you.
And I'm glad you asked that, because I was actually going to point that out, that we did have reservations, and so far they have shown that we didn't need to.
Good.
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 Okay, so that's I'll move along here. So that's Russell. Work on the Hagewald well, getting that to a permanent source started. The engineer came up last Tuesday and was taking some measurements, and we're kind of getting a game plan of collecting data. So that is starting. Mark Tittle is back to work, light duty. He was out on a stroke. So
Awesome.
yeah, he's back. So that's really good news. And yeah, that's about it for my update.
Thank you.
I think somebody asked about the crew, and so far, yeah, the crew, and they know if they need to take a day off, this is tough on everybody, it's tough on family, home life, everything. And so far, not a day off from any of the crew members. So to kind of give a shout out to them, I guess, because it's a time where you could take advantage of the situation if you wanted to. There's been nothing of the sort.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Yep. That's it.
Ben?
Yeah, I saw a Rob's iPhone. I don't know if that's Rob Ferris wanting to give a report too. I'd give him space before jumping into mine.
Staller.
Yeah, that's me. I'm just here to answer questions if you have any, and then if we are going to talk about if you guys had any questions on the station doors. I don't know when that is on the agenda because I didn't look at one. So I don't really have a report other than what I submitted in the packet. Pretty much concentrating on the COVID-19 response and trying to make sure that we have everything we can have in place for our volunteers to keep them safe and healthy. We are purchasing a considerable amount of materials in preparation for that. We did get an order from the State Department of Emergency Management. They kind of enhanced our PPE. We got some N95 masks, disinfected wipes. We got that the other day. Other than that, we're trying to manage providing service that the community expects and deserves, and with the more abundance of caution to keep our volunteers confident with what they're doing and what we're doing for them, and then making sure that they're going to be safe and not taking any germs back to their family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about all I have to give. Like I said, I was kind of just here to answer questions if you had any, and then talk about those doors if we get
Okay,
to.
so yeah, let's talk about those doors. Gordy got a quote for with installed and with tax $4,500. So how does that get split between with Fire District 2, or is that something that, is there a budget for this? How does this work?
I'm not sure if we co-own the building, to be honest with you. It just slipped in my mind at this point. If the building's co-owned, yeah, it would be a 50-50 deal. If not, I think we fluffed our budget enough to account for it. We would just drop some other stuff that we were planning on doing. Of course, we're already having to do that, you know, with the expenses we're putting out in COVID. It's kind of offsetting a couple projects that I had in mind, but basically, to give you the Reader's Digest on the background, is we had some turnouts disappear from the station. The turnouts cost right around $3,500, and we come up a full set come up missing, and then a pant and a coat. So we're sitting right around about, I think it was like $7,500 of loss over the last couple of years. And that was just basically, we think that they walked out the door when we were on a call and the doors were open. So I actually was involved with a replacement of a door where I work, and they asked, do you want it to be an auto closing door? Because we were having issues with heat loss in the winter, and we're like, yeah, we'll take the auto closing door. It was like, I don't know, $700 more. And then that popped into my head is, how come you've never thought about auto closing doors at the fire hall? And so I had Gordy reach out to his door guy that they use at the Public Works, and that's where that quote come from. I reached out to several other overhead door companies in the Portland area and Hood River area, and none of them really were interested in talking with me. The ones that did were really gung-ho until it come time to provide me a quote, and then they never provided me a quote. So that's kind of where we're at with that single source quote.
So Rob, this is Liana. I can look into, I believe the building is co-owned with Fire District 2. And if this is under $5,000, and if you do feel that there is room in your budget, then council doesn't need to have a motion to approve it. It's only if the budget would have to be changed that council would need to approve it because it's under a dollar threshold. So again, I can talk with you offline and we can see how we can move this forward.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't have the budget in front of me, but I think it would go under building and repair and improvements. But, you know, I think we usually always fluff that up in case we have something catastrophic. And then, you know, we always move in and out of line items when we have to. But yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay.
It improves. So right now, when the power goes out, we have to physically lift those doors up. So this improvement puts a chain drive in there. So when we lose power, we only have to pull the chain like a, you know, hand over hand, and it takes the safety factor out of it. Takes about 4 people to lift one of those doors.
Wow.
So just to give you some background on that.
Is this something we'll be able to move to the new fire station when that gets built?
No.
Because I don't want to be spending money on this and then leaving it behind.
No, we're basically using the existing doors, and we're changing the drive components. So it's all mostly controls with our existing equipment, and then adding on some stuff to the spring system to work.
Okay, so it sounds like you and Liana are going to work on that offline.
Yep.
All right, Ben, you can only put it off for.
Yeah, thanks Rob for helping us all.
Hey, Ben, I'll buy you some more time. I totally forgot to mention water usage. So it's pretty interesting. The month of March, when compared to the month of February, we're up 3%. And that's 28 days for 28 days. There's 31 days in March. If I count the last 2 days, full 31, we're up 8%. And that's right in line of what we sold, or what we produced rather, last year at this time. So a lot of residents using water, but we won't know where the water went exactly until we read the meters. And
It
and see
went
what
to
the-
lawns. You know exactly where it went. Everybody's getting their lawn fired up.
We're just washing our hands over here at our house. The
And-
time.
I honestly, yeah, there's a lot of hand washing going on. There's a lot of gardening. Everybody's stuck at home. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that in there. We are up 3% as far as water produced.
Even without the lodge.
Even without the lodge. But hey, while I'm jinxing things, we could have a large leak somewhere too. So I don't know. You know, we won't know. We won't know until we read the meters. Just stay tuned.
Okay, you're
All
done.
right, Ben.
So COVID is really weird times. There's basically all the same things are going on, and there's a whole bunch of new things going on, but less distraction. So with those fewer distractions, I was able to get you guys a written administrator's report this time, but I did want to highlight a few things. 2 of those are your permission to seek grants. The first one is on page 230 there, right at the bottom. There's a Department of Commerce grant up to $25,000 that would really like to apply for. Deadline's tomorrow, and ready to submit that before the deadline expires there. This would pay for the sorts of things that you guys have been doing a lot already. So residential density measures, housing action plans. We would be submitting this one to look at some of the zoning things again. What we're considering right now is one of the project categories that they identify, which would be to have a minimum density of 6 units per acre, net units per acre. So consideration of that's lot sizes that are about 6,000 square feet. And so we currently have a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet in our R1 district, the most common residential zone. And this would require people to build to that instead of building the larger lots. I'm not sure that that's something the community would be very supportive of, but this would allow us to go through and see whether that works or whether it doesn't work. You know, what we see a lot is people have the ability to go smaller with the lots in subdivisions, and they don't. And so maybe that's something that really is preferred, and we wouldn't go for a regulation on that. But this grant would allow us to explore that. The other concept in there two other concepts. One would be looking at zoning, both in our map and text, but more in our map. This is something that's recommended in the buildable lands inventory and housing needs assessment that was performed through the EDC with your support. That looking at the zoning map was there. The reason being, the housing needs analysis says that we need, in order to keep things affordable moving forward, we need 30% of the units constructed over the next 10 years to be multifamily residential, but only 2% of the available land is multifamily, allows multifamily residential. So there's a huge disconnect there. This would allow us to address some of that disconnect. And then the third thing would be looking at our water sewer policies that currently prevent extension outside of city limits, to allow that extension contingent on a pre-annexation agreement. So what that would look like is a property owner signs a document. This is probably the wrong word, and Robert will jump on me, but essentially it gives the city power of attorney to sign the petition for annexation at some point in the future. So those are the 3 components that we would look for support from Commerce from. I have that highlighted, and I wanted your feedback too on this, but I'm looking for you to authorize an application for that and looking for your feedback to see if staff reports are not the place to request action. The end of the staff report, or end of that, also has a similar one. The Department of Ecology has money earmarked for City of Stevenson for shoreline planning activities. Remember, they're still reviewing the program, or they haven't yet taken it up to review. But once they do, then there will be some potentially map changes, more public involvement and response there. So want your authority to enter into that, or to prepare that request that's earmarked for us. Lots of other stuff in there. Only two that I want to talk about. One is the pathway between North Bonneville and Carson. So this is an exciting one. People have time to look at project concepts, and that includes the Friends of the Gorge. They really want to start looking at acquiring the corridor from North Bonneville through Stevenson to Carson. And so they reached out and said they could probably be a funding partner with the city as the lead there in talking to landowners and identifying that corridor. So that's exciting. No action for you guys specifically on that, but it isn't often that somebody just comes and offers to partner with money like that. So that's pretty cool. The other thing that I'm working on is some of the grant programs. Scott mentioned this. So COVID-19 has loosened up a lot of state money that's coming down to us at the local level. Two of those that I've been really tracking are from the Department of Commerce. They total about $350,000. And Annie probably knows about this, Kurt has been working his tail off to get the distribution plans in place and approved by the state so that that money can start coming to us at the local level. What I'm really focusing on with that is to try to break the status quo thought process where as service providers, we're the only ones, there's nobody capable of providing that service. And so we have to jump in and find city resources or county resources. Right now, there's a lot of private industries that have resources that aren't usually available. And so specifically what I'm talking about, the homeless housing grants will fund the rental of hotels just to be available for use in case some of the frontline responders or COVID patients need housing. And so instead of focusing on the county fairgrounds as a place to host them, focus on the business owners and get that money into their hands instead of ours. So both of those are moving forward, and funding will be available soon on that. And that's all. End of report.
So you were looking on, am I muted? You were looking on some input, some direction on that, on a grant. So just kind of a general consensus to go ahead.
Mhm.
Did you guys have some thoughts? Did you want to give him a thumbs up and tell him he's doing a good job?
Good job, man.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, guys.
And just
And,
real quick to follow up on, sorry, Scott, follow
ahead.
up on Ben's comment, the monies that are being proposed for like first responders and folks to have access to lodging facilities like the lodge, the requirements are pretty intense. And then the idea is that you open up after this is over and say, oh, by the way, I had 50 folks in here that were, getting through COVID-19. You got a bad PR problem. So that's sort of where it is. I mean, they're throwing it out there asking for that assistance, but in reality, it's not going to work for those folks who want to open back up full time.
Yeah.
So there's a couple thoughts on that. My brother works in for a couple of hotels in the LA area, and they're still open. And if they host medical workers or frontline workers, then once they leave, those rooms are offline for 72 hours, and then they have an application they can put on that is supposed to be approved to kill the virus. And then actually, as it turns out, our own Chris Malone has, I don't know if he has to get certified, but has taken on that service. So he's ready to, if it's a car, a hotel, or where your sick family member was. So there are some options on that, and there is a way to spin it as well. As we did everything that we could to help out, even to the point of making available some of our rooms. So yeah, it can be a negative spin, but I think that when it's presented properly, it could be a positive as well.
Absolutely, Scott. I think to that point, you don't want to be known as somebody who chose not to help out. So I think it's how you spin it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Liana.
So my report, basically I've been working a lot on the COVID response and working as a part of that ICS team. So communicating both up and down the chain information related to what's going on with COVID. In addition, I received a call from the auditor. One of their larger clients backed out of their audit because they are closed and they don't have anyone to access the documents. And they asked if we would be willing to have our audit on May 4th. And I said, sure, why not? We have nothing else to do. So, but it'll get us out of the way because typically our audit is in the fall, and that's when we want to be applying for grant funding and loan funding related to the wastewater treatment plant project. So it's just a shift of timeline, more or less. And so, but what that means is our annual financial report that's typically due the end of May is going to be due before May 4th. So Anders and I are working on wrapping that up, as well as responding to the documents, and they're going to do it all remotely. So we'll be submitting them, all of the documents via email or online. Anything that can't be done that way, we'll put in a box and they'll come pick it up. Typically they're working out of Vancouver, and so they are able to come out and do that work. And then return it when the audit's complete. On the water meter project, which would help us determine what the water usage on a more regular basis, to provide us more updated information. Right now, as I'm aware, we're still on track to do some meter installation in May. They were going to have someone follow around the guys when they read meters this month, and then to at least get an idea of where our meters are located, so that when the Tegan comes out, it's a lot easier for them to find the meters. We're still going to have to flag them and mark them, and probably have someone come out and follow them around while they do the installations. And depending on how old the meter is or other infrastructure challenges, we may have to do a little bit more work, but for the most part, it will all be done by an outside contractor. And that project is moving forward. We also worked on the interface between the various software models from the meter reading system and then our financial software. And so that's moving along. Everything else is just going along.
Great. I would, unless you guys have some questions for Liana before we move on. All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the vouchers so we can pay the bills.
Has anybody actually looked over that documentation?
Is it only the 2 pages, Liana? Sorry, I leaned into the screen like you need me there closer. Yeah, I only saw 2 pages in the vouchers though, is that right?
Yes, it is only those 2 pages.
Motion to approve the vouchers is presented in the 2 pages. Never seen a 2-page voucher, but that's awesome.
Annie, I second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any other discussion?
This is Matthew. Quick question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, I can wait.
All right. I had a question on the second page of what was the statement for Ronald Mueller?
That was the last work that he did in March. So he's the consultant that we use for the wastewater treatment plant.
Right. I guess I forgot he still did some in March. That's right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Amy?
I guess I'm wondering who has looked back to verify the paperwork. Has anybody done that? Anybody not on staff? Like we usually review the vouchers?
Oh, you mean with the invoices
physical.
attached?
Yeah.
I I'm just going at the 2 pages are supported.
Right, understood. I'm just wondering about like, do we have a process for looking back through the paperwork at any point? Like a spot check, spot check audit of the vouchers, which is one of the things we do monthly and I think is kind of important.
Absolutely.
So I can have the vouchers ready at the next council meeting. If there's any questions that you have, we can address it at that time.
Great idea. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, around the table, yay or nay? Matthew,
Aye.
Robert,
Yay.
Amy,
Aye.
Annie,
Hi.
and Paul.
Aye.
You said
Okay.
yay or nay. Everybody else said something different. I don't know what that vote was.
Yo.
I think the important
Yo.
part was that there was no nays. How about that? I think that I've given all of my updates throughout the meeting, so I don't have any additional updates. Do any of you council members have anything that you would like to talk about as far as a report?
This is Robert. Just real quick, I was just wondering, are we having an executive session on the document that starts on page 5? Ken? No, that's out.
I think you approved that in the consent agenda.
Consent agenda.
Yep.
Ah, okay. You got me.
Well, I have a nice little bit of good news. So I've been working with the Clean Air Agency, and after plenty of complaints and discussions and whatnot, I've now I've taken on one of the monitoring stations. So I'm installing that at my place, and they've agreed to install 2 or 3 more up in throughout northern Skamania, because having one station right on the water doesn't really reflect the air quality throughout the entire county. So, and I'll be helping them locate resources where they can install those as well. So we'll have more of a better view of how the area is in the county as a whole.
Good.
Cool. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Amy. I'll just give a quick update on the EDC. We had our board meeting virtually, kind of like we are here today, and things are kind of moving along. Kevin Waters, the executive director, I think is doing a great job at making sure that information is getting out there. He has processed a number of loan applications, like holdover loan amounts for local businesses. We also had a conversation about reaching out to all the business owners on each contract. So for the city of Stevenson, it's all of the business owners within the city of Stevenson. So that is happening, and it was happening, I think, before even I requested it. But just to let you know, like when I was asking about the contract deliverables with the chamber, making sure that we're getting those contract deliverables from the EDC is also, I think, an important part of that. So that is happening. And if anybody has heard that there are any local businesses who have questions or need help applying for the PPP program or applying for the small business loans, all of that help is available through the EDC. And I feel like that's been pretty well advertised, but just I feel like it warrants just commenting on here as well. So just to make sure you guys all know as well that things are moving and the EDC is quite busy. And at one point there was talk about, do we need all of this staff, or, have things slowed down enough that we don't? And the answer is yes, they need all of that staff, because actually things are quite busy down there in their office, even though none of them are really in the office. So that's the quick update on the EDC.
All right. Anyone else?
Paul, did you have an update on the waterfront trail?
It looks a whole lot better than it did a week ago. So my wife and Ben and I went down and spent 2 or 3 hours cleaning it up, and it's in pretty good shape now.
Good.
I guess another thing that comes to mind is the building on Russell Street that Candy owned, past tense, has sold. It is the new owners have told the tenants that they need to leave within a month or so. It's going to become a hotel, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's good news.
Wow, that is pretty cool.
They're the previous owners of the Camas Hotel. So they're no strangers to downtown and running a hotel. So just imagine to close your eyes and think about what that's going to look like with a refurbished Russell Street, a reinvigorated downtown, and a cute little hotel right in the middle of it all.
Oh, that's fantastic news. That's really great.
Are they going to raise the building? Because that building's not structurally sound as a hotel.
So
No,
this is Carl. They've been in and met with Ben and I, and
Okay.
they've got an architect on board. And like the mayor said, it doesn't seem to be their first rodeo.
Well, I'm not worried about an architect. I'm worried about a structural engineer. Good luck with that.
All right, Annie, I guess you're the only one. You got yet an update for us?
No, I was just gonna, I guess I mentioned earlier about the chamber and their efforts. So no, there's no real update other than that.
Great. All right, is there anything that any of you would like on the agenda next month?
This is Amy. I'd like to continue the discussion about how to handle remote meetings. And specifically, I think that the ability for council members to call in is of crucial importance.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking that before we all went away, I wanted to reaffirm what we talked about. So we're already into it. Well, just base $700. If you guys are keen, the best way to get the camera, microphone, speaker setup is one of the pricier options, anywhere from $700 to $1,000, and that does include a camera that's a 360, provides panorama all the time, plus like an array, a microphone array, and then also speakers that would sit in the middle of the room. And I was engineering something that was going to cost about half of that, but it was engineering it instead of pulling it out of a box and plugging it in. So it sounds like this is something that I've heard a couple of times from a couple of you. So if you guys are keen for about $1,400 or $1,500 in hardware, then we can move forward.
No, I think that's great. My only question was, I know you were talking about having a TV kind of on that back wall. What had originally started this was discussion from the audience wanting to be able to see the agenda as well. So I guess we need to be able to see somebody who's remoting in, but at the same time, we need to let the audience see the agenda. So just keeping that in mind. I like the idea of the system you've been describing.
So it was part of an email exchange I had with Liana, and I said, well, maybe we just put the TV over by where the big clock is. Well, then that completely blows out of the water the ability to see the agenda if you're sitting in the gallery. So the TV has to sit back there. The way the camera is going to sit is the person that's remoting in will see all of us and hear all of us. You guys will be able to spin in your chair and look at the TV. The only person that would have to spin all the way around would be me, or they'd be looking at the back of my head. So actually, no, the camera would be in front of me. So I just wouldn't be able to see them. So I think that if you put a list of pros and cons together, I'm happy to spin around so I can see them.
There might be a way also, Scott, to reconfigure where you sit or that room or how the table is in relation to the gallery.
And another option is the little unit that I've found for the computer does have 2 video outputs. So for not that much more money, an HDMI cable and a separate monitor that could sit on the table with the or underneath the camera or something.
Kind of in their
These are-
seat.
Yeah, something. Yeah, right. Exactly. These are, I think, are just minor details compared to just moving forward.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I've called into several meetings
Right.
and it's very challenging.
So I've been doing a lot of thinking on this. Is when you think about a call-in meeting, everybody typically has a piece of hardware next to their head. We were trying to pull that model off in an open room with a phone set to conference. That is not the way that phone was designed for a large room like that, and that's not the way that system is designed for a room like that. So really focusing on the hardware itself, and then also moving into using this Zoom software, I think that it's going to take a big step forward. And then the other part is that in this situation, we're all calling in. It's going to be interesting to see how it works when we're mostly all in the room and we're going to have one person calling in.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that will likely be the greater scenario, right? One would assume in general.
Mhm. And plus we're getting some pretty good, we're getting some hours logged on playing with the software. And as you see, this is the very first time that we've actually recorded our meeting. So couple of steps forward for us as far as technology goes in our meetings.
So Scott or Liana, can you see if anybody is tuned in via YouTube to this meeting?
I'm afraid
Yeah,
to
I
turn
am.
it on.
So I know that Anders has been watching it the entire time. I don't know who else has been following along, but I don't,
Yeah,
and I
yep.
haven't checked out to see if metrics, because again, when Scott pulls it up, it gets, you get back feed and the delay, and it's too challenging to do both.
Well, I'm wondering if this would allow more people to quote unquote attend our meetings. If they didn't have to leave the comfort of their living rooms, would we get a higher percentage of people actually interested in what's happening in our city council?
Well, there was actually a discussion when it came to how we were going to proceed tonight. And originally it was going to be a live stream, and then you would have to email or find a way to get our attention. But after talking with Ken, we really did have to have not just allow for attendance, but also allow for participation.
Right.
So that there might be a few bugs to work out here. I'm looking at our Zoom list, and what is it, maybe 15 people on here, but a very legitimate concern is that when you have the ability for anyone to chime in, especially when you don't get to watch people walk through the door and sit in the gallery, what call it, a Zoom bombing. It's a new buzzword where
Right.
people can start shouting out rude things. You don't have any way, short of just muting them, you
Right.
can't ask them, you don't have any way to escort them physically out of a room. So there's the attend and then participate. So then they've got to be kind of the same.
There's also
And there's
some cities
7
that have, Anders said there were 8, so one had left. One of them's Mary and one of them's Anders. Hi guys. There are some cities that are also playing with YouTube Live as well during this, and so allowing people to comment during just using that one mode of communication, so they wouldn't have to dial into Zoom. They can use YouTube Live and live comment chat during that. I don't know what the record retention policy would be with regards to the chat option, so I have closed it down on the Zoom again because of records retention. This will be live on YouTube and it's recording, so this will be, and I'm also recording it to the city servers, and so we'll see how much bandwidth it takes up.
Right.
But because it was recorded, I have to keep it forever.
Right.
Just, can I clarify, the AGO made clear that you have to allow the public to participate at least by telephone. And by participate, they clarified that means necessarily just to be able to listen, not necessarily give input. That's up to the council and the chairman.
Right.
So you know, we have to allow at least a telephonic participation to listen in on the meeting. But that's, right now, that's all the AGO's requiring, but that's partly because they've also limited the content of the meetings at this point to only necessary and routine matters. So no public hearings, nothing that really would generate controversy or where you would expect, you know, public input or concern. So it's pretty limiting. But that's kind of how the AGO is spinning it.
Okay, so I obviously misunderstood the participation part.
Right. So want to clarify.
All right, this is Rick here. I don't know if you can still hear me, but you know, there's what's allowed and there's what's appropriate. So, you know, obviously, you don't want to have this bombing you're talking about, but at the same time, you want to have the public be able to participate if at all possible.
Okay, all right. Well, if there's no other requests for next month's meeting, then I would like to adjourn the meeting at 7:57. Thank you guys very much for your patience, and I look forward to seeing all of you around soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.